Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic as Maverick flies past my window with amazing timing. Now look at this puzzle on the screen today. This is by the magnificent setter Udukos. It's called Killer Cave, and I spotted this on Logic Masters Germany because it's got a very, very unusual profile. It has almost 100% rating. I think it's 99% and 5 stars out of 5 for difficulty. It's called Killer Cave, and that is because it appears, I've read the rules, and it seems to combine two of my favourite things, killer Sudoku and a cave logic puzzle. Now, we have done a couple of cave puzzles on the channel in the past. It's sort of a Japanese logic problem. It used to appear in the US Puzzle Championship sometimes. And I used to spend, in the years before Cracking the Cryptic, where I was an investment banker for some sin I must have committed in a former life, I used to spend many happy lunchtimes in Canary Wharf hunched over puzzles like this one, well, like the cave puzzle element of this one, basically whiling away my lunch hour and forgetting about what I actually did for a living. So I'm really, really stoked to try this one. And in fact, Udukos strikes me as an incredibly selfless person as well, because he actually emailed us just a couple of days ago to recommend 2 puzzles to the channel. And he never mentioned that this puzzle existed, even though clearly it's one of the great puzzles of the last few weeks. At least, it may be even better than that. So, thanks to Udukos for being so selfless, and I hope that you're going to enjoy watching me do battle with this puzzle. Do I have any news for you today? Actually, I'll just mention yesterday's puzzle, which has been getting some incredible feedback. Do have a look at that if you haven't had a go at it. Look at it give it 30 seconds, if only to have the experience I did, which is to be absolutely convinced that the puzzle was broken. I was so convinced I called Mark to complain about the puzzle he'd sent me, only to be told to go away and think harder, which I did, and eventually figured out that it wasn't broken after all. But it's a really weird one because you look at it and go, no, it's just broken. So I'll try and remember to put a card on the screen. Other than that, try our apps. Have a join us on Patreon. You know the normal score. Anything you can do to help us keeps us going, which we're most grateful for. And with all that said, let's get to the rules of Udukos' puzzle. I'll read them to you now. We have got normal Sudoku rules apply. Grey squares are walls, and green squares are cave. Well, what does this mean, you might be wondering? We don't have any green or grey squares, but we do have an example over here, which will be relevant. I'll get to the example once I've read the rules. Some of the cells must be coloured grey, so that all grey cells, brackets the walls, are orthogonally connected to the edge of the grid, and all other green cells form an orthogonally connected area, the cave. A clue in the top left corner of a cell indicates the sum of the digits that are seen from this cell looking north, south, east and west. The cell with the clue counts once towards this sum. Okay. Walls obstruct the view. A cell with a clue must be part of the cave, and within the field of vision of a clue, digits may not repeat. Now that is quite complicated. Let us see if we can understand that in the context of this example, which I'm going to look at reading the rules again to see if I can understand it. So you can see this is an example puzzle using the digits 1 to 6. Let's look at the cave element first. You can see every cell in the grid is either green or grey. The green cells all connect with one another orthogonally. The grey cells all reach the edge of the grid through orthogonal connections through grey cells. So that makes sense to me. Now what about these 10, 14, 21, these clues in the corner of cells? How do they work? Right, I see. So look at this 10 clue here. That 10 clue sees, if it looks downwards, before it hits a wall, it sees this 1, that one. And then if it looks eastwards, it sees the 2 and the 4 before it hits a wall. And it also sees itself, which is that one. So this 10 clue sees a 1, 2, 3 and 4, and therefore is a 10. let me look at this 21 clue. I just want to convince myself I understand how this works. So this 21 clue, I think, is going to be summing a 6, 1 to the west, a 3 to the south, a 2, 5 above it, which add up to 17, and a 4 in its own cell. Right, so I do sort of understand. You have to basically, sum the green squares you can see from the clue squares in each of the directions until you hit a wall or the edge of the grid, and then that will be the clue total. So, it all sounds very straightforward, doesn't it? Let's see. Do have a go yourselves. The way to play, of course, is to click the link under the video as usual. And now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now, I think there was a rule that said that all clue cells were... A cell with a clue must be part of the cave, so it must be green. So that means every single clue with a top left-hand corner digit is a green cell. So let's do that and see if that sheds any sort of light on what's going on. Which it should do, because this is part of the cave and not the wall. Right, the 43 clue catches my eye, so that's telling us you can't repeat digits in a cave, can you? Right, so this is interesting, because this clue must see exactly 8 different digits. And how do we know that? Well, that's using the secret, of course. Now, the secret, which I've been able to tell people in the last couple of days a couple of times, is to do with the fact that if you think about any complete box of a Sudoku, or any complete column, or any complete row, if we correctly complete this row, it's going to have the digits 1 to 9 in it once each. If you add up all those digits, you get 45. So, let's think about that in the context of a 43 clue here. That's telling us, because it's seeing different digits that sum to 43, it must be seeing 8 different digits and not be seeing a 2. Because if it was seeing 9 different digits, it would be a 45 clue. It's not a 45 clue. And we can't miss out 2 cells that sum to 2, because then we'd have to miss out 2 1s or something, and that just is nonsense. So it must be missing exactly a 2 and be 8 cells large. Now, that's interesting in the context of column 9, because this 43 clue is now not... It can't only be seeing those cells. We can't just turn these cells green, because if we did that, this clue would also be green, and this clue would see the whole of column 9 and be a 45 clue, which it's not. So that means this clue must extend to the west at least 1 cell. Now this 23 clue, what's that telling us? Well, okay, what that's telling us, I think, is that the amount of the sum of the digits in row 9 that are contributed to this 43 clue has a maximum, and that maximum is 23. Because if we put 26 along here, for example, if we turned all of those green, in fact they couldn't add to 26, let's say we turned all of those green and we made them minimums, they would then add to 28 and this clue would be broken. So we must keep the cells in this row that are green and connect to this 43 to a maximum of 23, which means that this clue must have 20 at least vertically. Now, how many cells must 20 be? It must be at least 3 cells, because 8 plus 9 only add to 17. So these 3 squares must be green. And now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've now proved 6 of the positions, 6 of the 8 positions in the 43 clue. Right, and we've got a 42 clue here. Right, 42 has a different profile though, doesn't it? Because 42 might only be 7 cells, because what we could have is a 7-cell 42 region that missed out a 1 and a 2, because 45 minus 1 minus 2 is 42. These are the knowledge bombs that we donate on Cracking the Cryptic. So if this is a minimum of 7 cells, and it can never connect to here, because if it took those 5 cells, it would obviously then become a 9-cell string and should have a 45 total. So it can get 4 cells from column 9, so it must take at least 3 cells from row 1. Oh, I see, this is sort of iterative, isn't it? Now I can look at this 41 clue. Yeah, this is clever. Okay, so the 41 clue has the same profile as the 42 clue. How many digits is it? It must be at least 7 cells and a maximum of 8 cells. If it's missing a 4, it's 8 cells large. If it's missing 2 cells, it's missing a 1 and a 3. But it can't be missing 3 cells, because the minimum it could be missing would be a 1, 2 and a 3, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, and the clue maximum would then be 39. So this is 7 or 8 cells, and now it can take no more than 4 horizontally. So it must take 3 vertically. At least it could take more than that. Now this clue is a little bit less potent, look. 37. So 37 is a minimum of 6 cells, but that we know that because 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 is 35, and that's 5, so we need at least 1 more cell. So this is 6 cells minimum. Now it can't get all of those cells. It can't get more than 4 cells from this column. A 5th cell would then connect it to the 41 and make it a 45 clue at least. So it must get 4, it must have at least 2 from this direction. I think that's going to put more pressure on the 43 again. But if we look in this direction, the 37 could take 5 cells, so it must take at least 1 cell vertically. And now I think we can iterate again though, because now the 43... Oh no, we can't. Oh, sorry. I thought we were going to be able to keep going with this, but the 43 now could reach here, and then it would take 5 cells, 6, 7, 8. And we know it's an 8-cell region, so that's very annoying. What about the fact we got 1 cell here? This 1 cell is pushing... Well, actually it is doing something, because the 41 clue, which we know is of minimum size 7 now, can only get 6 cells from column 1. So it must take a cell from row 1, and that actually connected it to here. So now the 42 clue, which is at least 7, can't take more than 5 from row 1, so it must take 2 vertically. So now we've got 6 here, and this could be a 7th and an 8th. Or it could just be a 7th in one of those 2 positions. The 43 is exactly 8, and so far we've identified 6 of it. Oh, okay. Well, it can't take more than 1 more cell in column 9 now, and that would be a 7th cell, so it must take this cell. So that's now we've got 7 cells identified in the 43. The 37 is at least 6. Oh, right, so now we can iterate this one. It can take 4 maximum now in row 9, so it must take that one. And this might be as far as we can go. So we've got a gap of 2 on each border. Hang on, so we know that none of these can join together, don't we? We can never join the 43 to the 42, or the 43 to the 37, or the 37 to the 41. So there is always at least 1 cell gap along these borders. So we've got to put 4 grey cells in the borders at least. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This has to grow by 1. 2, 3, 4, 5. This has to grow by 1 at least. That was an at least as well. This one has to grow by 1 at least. And this one has to grow by 1 at least. Right. Got it. Well, I've got something. I'm not actually sure it allows me to do anything, but this is still interesting. We know that there are at least one grey cell in these dominoes to keep these clues apart. So 4 of these 8 cells that I've just highlighted are grey. That means a maximum of 4 of them are green. But at the moment, I've got 7 cells in the 43. The 43 is 8 cells large, so one of those domino cells must be green and must contribute to the 43. The 42 clue needs to be at least 7 large, and it's only 6 at the moment, so at least one of these domino cells must contribute to the 42. And at least one of them must contribute to the 41, because this is only 6 cells large at the moment, and it needs a 7th cell at least. And the same is true for the 37. So in fact, these dominoes here are made up exactly of 4 grey cells and 4 green cells, 1 to each of the corner clues, which I suspect isn't, I was about to say I suspect isn't that helpful, but let me just think about that for a second. I know there's no 2 in this region. Yeah, okay, there is something, isn't there? Because if there's no 2 in the 43 region, and there isn't, I now know actually there's no 2 in the 42 region either, because this 42 region is going to grow to be a size 7 region, and therefore it is missing a 1 and a 2. Now that means that the 2 in column 9 is in one of those 2 squares, which I know is probably not the most amazing deduction you've ever seen on Cracking the Cryptic, but it is a deduction. So this is missing a 1 and a 2. Yeah, we can keep going with this. So the 41 clue we also know is of size 7 eventually, so it's missing a 1 and a 3. So again, where do you put the 1 in row 1? It can't go in the 42, it can't go in the 41, so it must be in one of those 2 squares, and in the grey square, whichever one of these is grey. Now the 41 is missing a 1 and a 3, and the 37 is growing to be of size 6 eventually, so it is missing 3 cells that sum to 8, so it doesn't have a 1 in it either. 3 cells that sum to 8, if you're using different digits, is either 1, 2, 5 or 1, 3, 4. So where do you put the 1 in column 1? It can't go in a green cell, so it must be in one of those 2 cells. The other thing that we can note there, though, I don't know how to pencil mark this, but I know there's no 3 in the 41 region. So, and I know that the 1 is occupying the grey cell in column 1. So the 3 in column 1 must belong to the 37 region. But, oh, well that's helpful in a way. The 3 must belong to the 37 region, but it could be here. If the 37 region goes up to that square, then it could be a 3. So I don't really know how to pencil mark this. There's a 3 in one of those 4 cells, which I don't really want to pencil mark across a box like that. But what that does mean is that the 37 clue, which is missing 3 cells that sum to 8, is not missing a 3. It has a 3 in it, so it must also have a 4, and it must be missing the digits 1, 2 and 5. Yes, this is really, really clever. So now, if the 37 clue is missing a 2 and the 43 clue is missing a 2, there's a 2 in one of those 2 squares in row 9. Yeah, okay, I know, this is not... It's not profound, is it? But it's quite interesting. Sort of... Ooh, that cell's suddenly become interesting to me. I was just thinking, hang on a moment, that's not going to... Right, I can get my first grey cell now. I love this puzzle already. I absolutely love it because that square cannot be green. I love things like this. This cannot be green. Why not? Well, because this 6 clue now is forced. 3 cells adding to 6 would have to be a 1, 2, 3 triple. And I was noticing these squares. So these could not be 1 and 2. So the 1 and the 2 would have to go in those 2 squares. And if the 1 and the 2 are in those 2 squares, these acquire the potency of wall. They have to be walled squares, but we know that these regions have to grow by 1 each. So that one's going to grow there, and this one's going to grow there, and it's going to connect them, which cannot happen. So that doesn't work. Which means that square there must be wall, and we get to put our first grey cell into the grid. Now, our grey cell has to connect to an edge somewhere. That's the rules of cave. So it probably connects here, but I suppose it could connect there. Or I suppose it could connect there as well, so we don't actually know how that connects. Okay. So where do we look now? Where do we look now? That is the question. I've not got a Scooby-Doo. We've got a variety of clues that are sort of internal, off the perimeter of the grid. I don't quite see how to make use of them. You know, what I was thinking was things like, can this square be green? Because if it's green, this 12 clue sees 4 different cells, and that's the most a 12 clue could see. But I don't see why that's particularly difficult, or ruled out, or ruled in. So we've got to do something else. So can we... We might be able to do something with the perimeter. We've got to be a bit careful about... We know those 2 can't be grey because that's going to put too much pressure on the right-hand side, and it's the left-hand side, and it's exactly the same with those 2. Those 2 can't be the 1 and the 2, because that's going to force the 42 to take that square, the 43 to take that square, and connect them down column 9. So these are like a weird X-wing. There's a wall X-wing here. It either does that and that. Oh, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Oh my goodness me. Wow. Wow. Udukos, take a bow right now and present yourself as one of the great setters of our times. That is ridiculous. Right. Oh, I'm lost for words in admiration at this. Right. The wall sections are in an X pattern, in the sense they're either there and there, or they're there and there. Now, I want to look at that option. Now, if this is the arrangement of wall, we now know that this has to grow by 1 cell. So that's going to be green, and therefore that's the wall. Similarly, down here, this has to grow by 1 cell, so this is the wall. So these are the walled sections of the grid. But now, well, don't forget we have got to put the greens next to them to extend the 4 regions appropriately. How does this, or anything else grey, in the middle of the grid, ever connect to the edge? The answer is it cannot. Because it's all of the greys that are on the edge are all hidden. They're hidden behind green curtains. And it can't work. That is just beautiful. So that it's this juxtaposition of these greens. I mean, This is the sort of thing that just brings tears to my eyes. It's absolutely absurd that someone can have ideas like this and then execute them like that. That is just beautiful. It is beautiful. So now we can simply rule this out. This cannot be grey, because that would force that to be grey and force the greys to all be behind the green curtains. So that's grey. And therefore we have to extend this by 1 green, so that must be grey. We extend this by 1 green, and that must be grey. We extend this by 1 green, and that must be grey. And we extend that by 1 green. Now we can fill these in now, because we know in row 1, of course, you can't put 1 in the 41 or the 42. Same in column 1, that's got to be a 1. We need a 2 along there, a 2 here. And we have all sorts of digits now in the grid. It's only taken me 26 minutes. I don't think that's that bad. I feel like I've actually not... I haven't sort of stopped and just stared for ages and ages yet. Oh, hang on. Oh, I hope this doesn't give anything, but I'm just going to check. 6, 80, 86, 169, 169, 11 in the corners. I'm not sure actually. It's probably worth mentioning. So, what I noticed was that we now know the sum of the perimeter of a Sudoku, not a Sudoku, this particular Sudoku, because obviously the green cells here sum to 42. We know these two greys, we know those are 41, that's a 1, etc., etc. If you add up the clues around the grid, I think you get 169. So the sum of the perimeter squares is 169. But you can do a trick with the corners here, because think about the secret. We know those squares are a complete set of the digits 1 to 9, so they sum to 45. Those squares sum to 45. If we add in column 1, that's another 45, and add in column 9, that's another 45. So add all those 45s together, you get 180. Well, what's the difference between 180 and 169? Well, it's the corner squares, which are counted twice. So when we counted row 1 and then column 1, whatever's in that cell is obviously in both totals. So these squares here must sum up to 11. Now, if they sum up to 11, that's quite a low total, especially as, for example, that square cannot be a 1 or a 2. And neither can that one. So the absolute minimum value of those two squares would be 6. So the absolute maximum value of these two squares is 5. So that's got to be a 2, 3, or a 4. Because it can't be a 1. And this square here has got to be 1, 2, or 3. It can't be 2, so that's a 1 or a 3. Okay, this is not a 3. If that's a 3, sorry, not a 2. If this is a 3, what's the absolute minimum I can put into those two squares? Well, it's now become 4, because each of these corner squares sees a 1, 2, and a 3. Now, if 2 4s plus a 3 is 11, we'd have to put a 0 in there, which is not possible. So that square is a 1, I think. So now we know those 3 squares add up to 10. Again, this can't be 3 for exactly the same reason this couldn't be 3. So that must be now 2 or 4. Can we do that? Oh yeah, I can. Sorry, this is straightforward actually. Yeah, right. Look at column 1. Where does the 2 go in column 1? Well, we know it's not in the 37 region. The 37 region is missing the digits 1, 2, and 5. So the 2 is not there. So the 2 in column 1 is in one of those cells. In other words, it's in this 41 region. We know digits don't repeat in the 41 region, so these squares are not 2's. But where does the 2 go in row 1? Well, it's not in the 42 region, because this 42 region is missing a 1 and a 2, so it's not there. It's not those two for the reasons I just mentioned, so it only goes there. And that means these two squares add up to 8. Is that useful? We can't use 1's or 2's. Oh, but we could use double 4. Oh, you rotten thing. Right, okay. So this is 3, 4, or 5 in each case. Now, that one can't be... This region doesn't have a 5 in it. So this one... So that's not a 3. Okay, so we get this down... It's either double 4 in the corners, or it's a 3, 5 pair in that order. This is just brilliant, isn't it? I am just lost in admiration for this. I've not even got to any of the logic in the middle yet. Okay. So, what do we do now? What do we do now? We have got to... I don't know, that 31 looks too big. Yeah, that 31 has got to take a few cells, hasn't it? Let's just think about this. So this is a 2. So the minimum number of cells we could make those 4 squares add up to is 5, 7, 8, 9. You can't get to 31 with just 3 cells, can you? So it's got to be at least this domino. Those two are both green. Now if we take that square as well, that's isolating a lot of greens in the grid. Because, yeah, sorry, just to elaborate on my thinking there, if I make this square green now, I can't put greys in these cells, because these greys can't connect to the edge. So everything... Oh, this is just broken. Right. The reason this is not green is because these would have to be green. This 12 clue now sees umpteens. Well, it sees exactly 6 green cells. And that's nonsense. Given these digits have to be different, the minimum you can make 6 cells add up to is 21, the triangular number for 6. So, this is not correct. This square here is not green, it's grey. And this 31 clue does see 4 cells on top of the 2, so it is 4 cells adding to 29, which is 5, 7, 8, 9. Which I'm sure is very important. Oh, well, it restricts 1 in box 1, which means 1 in box 7 is in one of 2 places. So, yeah, okay, but the better question is perhaps where does the 3 go in box 1 now? Because the 3 doesn't go in anything the 41 can see. The 41 is not seeing a 3 because it's missing seeing a 1 and a 3, so the 3 must hide away in that domino, along with the 1, I think. So those 2 squares are a 4, 6 pair. And oh, right, and this is lovely because that fixes this clue. So that's 3 and that's 5 in order to ensure these add to 8. Those are not 5 anymore in row 1. And can we do more with this 12 clue? I know one of these squares must be grey, don't I? Because this cannot be a string of 3 greens, or the 12 clue breaks. So if one of these is grey, it doesn't matter which one it is. If it was this one, this would have to be grey as well, because you've got to get this one to touch the edge through orthogonal connections. So this is always grey, I think. Yeah, okay, that may be maybe a very minimal deduction. Not sure about this at all now. Okay, but we can do something similar with this cell now, can't we? This cell can't be green, because if it's green, this 12 clue now sees 4 different cells. I'm about to have a coughing fit. Sorry about my voice as well if it's still bad. But if this does see 4 different cells, the only way of making 12 in 4 different cells is to use a 1, because 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 adds to 14. And we can see that the 1 is in one of those squares, so you can't put a 1 in those squares. Ergo, this square here is grey. Now this grey has to connect to an edge, so it's got to take that one and that one to get out. And don't we have the same problem here if I connect this with the 12s? If I connect those up, they each become 4-cell 12 regions, in the sense that they see 4 cells that we'd have to contribute to their count, but neither can contain a 1, so you couldn't do it. So that square there is also grey. Oh, now. That is interesting in the context of this cell. I wondered if this would come up in this puzzle, and it has. That square there, we need to think about its colour possibilities, because what it cannot be is green. Because if it's green, we get checkerboarding. These 2 squares form a checkerboard, and you cannot have in a cave puzzle a 2x2 region that forms a checkerboard. Now, why not is the interesting question. And the answer is to think about the green cells. So we know that one of the rules of the cave is that the green cells connect to each other through they all connect to each other orthogonally. So how are we going to connect these together? Well, we don't know is the answer. They could go on a real journey round the grid, but eventually that journey will have to end up with an orthogonal connection here. Now, can you see what's happened now to this grey region? This grey region can't get to an edge, because if I do connect these 2 cells together via some mapping through the grid, I will inevitably encircle these 3 grey cells, and wherever these grey cells go after that, you can't get them to the edge. So you can't ever have a checkerboard pattern in a cave puzzle, and that means this square here needs to be grey. It doesn't actually do anything for us, but it is sort of an interesting point. So this 12 clue now is just 2 cells, and it's not 3, 9 because it sees 3 here. So this is either 4, 8 or 5, 7. It's not, and you can't put 4 there, so you can't put 8 there. Can we do any better than that is the question. And the answer to that question might be no. What about, I don't actually know where to look now. Oh, hang on. That can't be a 5, can it? Because of the... Yeah, that can't be 5. Because the 37 clue doesn't see a 5. It doesn't see a 1, 2 or 5. So that's actually 7 or 8, which means this is down to 4 or 5. Which feels almost important. Okay. But it's very unclear to me, at least, where I next need to look for digits. Maybe I've got to... Oh, no, I know what I could do. Oh, no, I couldn't. Sorry, I was thinking that... Is there something I can do with this 41 cage? This 41 cage hasn't got 1 or 3 in it. So there's a 5 in one of those 2 positions. It must see a 5, and it can't see a 5 along here. So there's a 5 here. Oh, but there's no 5 in this region. Bother. So the other thing I suppose we can say is that as there's no 5 in this region, the 5 in row 9 must be in one of those 3 squares. Yeah, that doesn't. I don't think that does very much, except obscure whatever clue that is. So 23 clue. Okay, So we've got to do better. What should we do in order to do better? 3 has to be in one of those 3 cells. I don't know what to do. Oh no! Ground to a halt. Okay. I mean, I really don't know what to do. Is there something we're missing about... There's got to be there's a 5 in this domino in box 1, there's a 5 in this domino in box 4, so there's a 5 in one of 3 places in box 7, and we know it's not in something the 37 clue can see, so the 5 is locked into one of 2 places. The 21 clue? Don't know. What was that one? That was the 23 clue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's still possible. You can make 23 and 6 cells. So I don't think I know whether this is in or out. 26 clue here. 13 clue here. 6 clue. 16 clue. No, I really am stuck. How do we get unstuck here? What is it that we need to do? We need to... Is there some way I can resolve this clue? This is a 12 clue. Or maybe I've just got to be more Goodliff-esque in my pencil marking. Oh, that's an interesting thought, actually. That is an interesting thought. This clue, the 37 clue, that doesn't see 2, 5 and 1, so it does see 4 and 6, which can't be there. So there must be a 4 and a 6 in 2 of these 3 squares. So that means, does that mean something for our 43 clue again? A little bit, doesn't it? These squares now have only got 1, 2, 3. Right, these 3 squares here have got limited options. They have to be selected from 5s, 7s, 8s, 9s. What was this one? 23. So if this is out, let's just look at that. If this is out, these 3 squares would have to add up to... Oh, they can. These 3 squares could add to 22 with 5, 8 and 9. Ah, but what about if that's in? So if that's in the cave... 7, 8... That breaks. Beautiful. Beautiful. Right. This doesn't work. Because the minimum I can make these 3 squares add up to is 20 with 5, 7 and 8. 5, 7, 8 plus 1 is 21. Which means, but I've got 2 more cells to fill here, which is never going to work, is it? We can't do it, because I can't make 2 cells add up to 2. It's impossible. So this is not going to be correct. Well, this is not going to be correct. That's got to be grey. These squares have to add up to 22, which means they, whoopsie, they have to be, let's go to this, they have to be 5, 8, 9. Let's get rid of the 5's pencil mark then. So does that tell us something useful? I suppose it tells us what these cells are, doesn't it? Because we've always known the composition of the 43, this is now 3, 4, 6 and 7. So these 2 squares are 8 and 9 to complete the column. Ah, okay, so where do we put 8 and 9 in row 1? You can't repeat them in the 42, what the 42 sees. So they must go in those 2 squares. So they become 8, 9. They become 5, 7. The 41 clue now needs to see... it needs to see 5 and 7. So those 2 squares are a 5, 7 pair. Oh, beautiful. And that gets me an 8 here, which gets me a 4 here to make those 2 add up to 12. Those... Right, we know there's a 4 and a 6 in here. The 4 can't be there anymore, so that must be 4. In fact, we know these two squares now, don't we? These are a 6, 7. Oh, in fact, we know the order as well. Where does 7 go? Yeah, that's got to be 7. That's got to be 6. This square here has got to be a 9, I think. This has got to be a 5 by Sudoku. These squares have got to be a 1-2 pair by Sudoku. And suddenly we're cooking with gas. Come on, keep going. Keep going. This 12 clue can't now be a 2-cell clue because this square would have to be a 5 or a 7. And we've already used our 5s and 7s in box 4, so that square's got to be green. Can it be a 4-cell 12 clue? No. No, it can't, actually. If we try and make that green, the only 12 clue you can make is going to be 5, 4, 1, 2, because this square is so restricted. But we can't put a 1 in any of those cells, so that's impossible. So that square must be grey. Now, now we get checkerboard avoidance possibilities. Look, because look, if we make this green, we've got a checkerboard. We can't have a checkerboard, so that's got to be grey. Same thing here. Make this green, you've got a checkerboard. Don't make checkerboards. Don't make checkerboards. This square here, if that's green, that would make a checkerboard. Nori nori. Okay. So, what does that mean? That means that we have... Oh, good grief. Yeah, we have got something important here. Look at the top. Look at this green region at the top. That needs to connect to the rest of the green in the grid. So it's got to come through this little alleyway here. Now, if that's green, no, that's not green. This is not right. If this was green, this 16 clue would see 6 different cells. We've already talked about it. 6 different cells would add up to at least 21 if we're using different digits. So that's grey, and therefore that's grey because this grey needs to connect to its friends. Right, the 16, we can go further again, because how could this be green? If this is green, we've got 5 cells at least that need to sum to 16. There is only one way for 5 cells to sum to 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So 5 and 7 couldn't be included in the total, and yet we know they must be. So that square must be grey, and now we don't create a checkerboard here, so that's got to be grey. And we can keep going, maybe, with... Where should we look next? I'm not sure if I should pencil mark these squares. I probably ought to. So these squares are 3, oh, they're 3, 4, 6, and 7 as well. 3, 4, 6, and 7. I feel like, yeah, we've got 3, 4, 6, 7 there, and 3, 4, 6, 7 there as well, and 3, 4, 6, 7 there. Okay. So, what do we do next? Can we do this 12 clue now? The answer is, I don't know. I can see we can't put 1 in it. If this was 7, this would have to be a 2-3 pair, which we would know the order of. If it's 5, these have to add up to 7, and they couldn't use 2, 5, or 1, 6, so they'd have to be they'd have to be 3, 4. That doesn't work because this square can be neither 3 nor 4 because of what it sees. So I think this square has to be a 7. That has to be a 5. These two squares now have to add up to 5 without using 1, so they're 2 and 3, and that must be in this order. So maybe we now look at column 2, where we still need to place 6s, 8s, and 9s. No, we don't look there. That's nonsense. What about the column 3 then? 5, 7. We need 4s, 8s, and no, that's useless as well. Bobbins. Okay, sorry. So, do we know... Do we know? What do we know about 13, 16? Can we do anything with the 16? If that was a 7, that would have to be a 5. That doesn't work. If that's a 7 and that's a 5, these would have to add up to 4 and use a 1-3 pair, which is impossible. So maybe there's something we can do here. So if this is 7, these... if this is 7, these 3 squares add up to 9 without using 1. So there are 2, 3, 9, 2, 3, 4 triple. 2 would have to go here because of the 2 down there. So if this is 7, 2, 3, 4 with the 2 here. If this is 5, these 3 squares add up to 11, again without using 1, so they have to have a 2 in them. Oh, right, that's it. Right, there's always a 2 in this triple. And we know there must be a 2 in 3 cells summing to 11, because if you try and do it with 3, 4, 5, you'll get to 12, which is too big. So this square here is 2. So that square there is 2 by Sudoku. And if this was 5, what do we need these two to add up to? 5, 7, 9. So these two have to add up to 9 without being 1, 8 or 2, 7. Okay, and if that's a 5, you couldn't put 4, 5 in here. So this would be 3, 6. So in option 1, where this is 5, this is 3, 6. In option 2, this is 3, 4. So there's always a 3 in here, which means there's no 3 there. Oh, okay. Does that mean something for this 6 clue? Well, one thing that's interesting about the 6... Oh, this 6 clue is huge, actually. This 6 clue is huge. It may look huge, but it is huge, because how could this 6 clue be a 3-cell clue? Well, it would have to have a 2 in it, because it would have to be 1, 2, and 3 in some direction. It would involve these. It would involve 3 of these 5 squares, and would have to have a 2 in it, and it doesn't. So it's a 2-cell clue, because it can't be a single. You can't put a single cell and surround it by greys, because then this green wouldn't be connected to its friends. So this is it's a 2-cell clue, and it can't have a 2 in it. There's no way. So it must be a 1, 5 clue, and there's a 5 here. So this must be a 1. This can't be the 5 now, so the 5 must be there. And we've got to stop this 6 seeing anything else. So that becomes wall. That becomes wall. This must get out, so that becomes green. Do we have checkerboard? No, we don't. I wondered whether we were going to have checkerboard avoidance possibilities, but I don't think that we do. How long have I had? How can I have had 53 minutes? I literally think I've just turned the webcam on. That is the sign of a quality puzzle. I'm just lost in it. Really am. 1 must be there by Sudoku. Do we know about anything else now? I feel like there must be a lot of... Well, maybe this 26 clue. Can we do something with that? That square can't be 3 or 7, look, by Sudoku now. Feels difficult for that to be green, doesn't it? But I'm not sure I can rule it out. 26. Can you make those just add up to 26? If they added up to 26, 36, 38, no, that would be a 7. Okay, so it's not good enough to just turn this green and turn everything else off and make it wall. So there is a vertical component to this 26 clue. But that's about as useful as a chocolate teapot, isn't it? Because I don't know whether it goes up or down. I've probably not been doing enough Sudoku. Oh, no, although this 21 clue must be a bit tricky now, isn't it? Or maybe not, actually. Is there a problem with that going vertical? Being something like that? Is that difficult or not? Ooh. Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. That's so interesting. I'm definitely going to show you that. Right, look. If this 21 clue is a vertical 21 string, like this, and that's it, i.e. it never takes a horizontal component, look what happens. This has to connect to its friends. Now, how can it do that? The only way we can connect this to its friends is it's got to come through this little passageway. But in coming through the passageway, it creates a 4-cell 10 region. Well, the only way you can make 4 digits sum to 10 is if they are the digits 1, 2, 3 and 4, which they cannot be. So that is not correct. So that's rather clever. So in fact that means that this, well, we don't know what that square is, but we know there's a horizontal component now to this 21 clue, so it must take that square. Right. And that gives us the opportunity to use checkerboarding, because now if I make that square grey, I've got a checkerboard. And then in connecting those two squares together, we will isolate this cell. So that square must be green. That's locked this one into a... Oh, no, it's done loads of stuff. This one is now in a cul-de-sac. So it's got to get out and get to the edge somehow. So it takes all of those. This one has to get out and connect to its friends. And suddenly the grid is not far away from being full now. Oh, the 26 had a vertical component. So now that must go north. It can't come down here. Don't make a checkerboard, so that can't be grey. That must be green. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, this is lovely as well. This square here, that cannot be green, because if it is, there are 7 cells then contributing a total towards this 26 clue. And the triangular number for 7 is 28. So these 7 cells would add up to a minimum of 28. Well, that's impossible. So that must be locked out. This green has to connect to its friends, so that becomes green. Wow. Wow. And we're not that far away, I don't think. Well, at least we're not that far away from filling the... Don't make a checkerboard. That's grey. Oh, 13. You can't do 13 in 5 cells, so that square's grey. So in fact, that's a bit beautiful. This 13 clue's now forced, because if that's a 9, that's a 1, 3 pair to add up to 13, and that's going to break that square. So that's not 9, that's 8. That's 9. Which means these two have to add up to 5. Okay, so they're 1, 2, 3 or 4. Which, I don't know if we can do that or not. I genuinely don't know. Oh dear. Bobbins. No, I can't see how to resolve that. I sort of feel like that is resolved by something, but I'm struggling to see what. Let's look somewhere else then. 1 has to be in one of those cells. What now? We could... No, I haven't got a clue. Not got a clue where to look. This 10 clue. Well, we know that 10 clue doesn't see 4 cells, so we know that one of these 2 cells at least is grey. But it could be that one. Is there a reason it can't be that one? If it's that one, we still wouldn't know actually what the colour of that one was. This one is influenced, I think, by the possibility of the 21 being a T pentomino. This one is influenced by the fact that we need to fill the 10 clue in. So we still got a lot of work to do here. I'm not really seeing, if I'm honest, where the optimum place to look is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, I'm really not. Okay. What on earth do I look at next? Oh, now, hang on, I can do this. 2s. There's a 2 in one of those squares. These add up to 5. They do add up to 5, so that is known. That is a 2-3 pair, which gives me a digit over here. 3 and 1 go in the grid. Oh, we knew one of those was a 3, so it's now that one. So we can get rid of 3s from those squares. 1 must be in this domino here. 4, 6 and 7. We still don't know what this is, which is a bit surprising. We've got a 4-6 pair in row 2. Is that useful? Answer is I don't know. 8. Oh, look at where 8 goes in this box now. By Sudoku, it's got to go here. Ah, okay, yeah. I'm going to carry on doing Sudoku in this Sudoku puzzle. Where does 5 go in this box? It's got to go in one of those, well, in fact, in one of those 2 squares. So that's a 5. That's a 7. 7 now must go here in box 2, so that's become a 4-6 pair. Those 2 squares have become 1 and 7 to complete row 2 and box 3. Ah, this being a 5 tells us what we need here. This has got to be a 6 now, doesn't it? Yes, 6 in order to get to 16. So that means we get a 6 here and a 4 here. We've done basically row 2. Those 3 squares have got to be 4, 5 and 9 to complete row 3. That's not 5. 8 is removed from that cell down there. And we may be on the road to something useful. Well, actually, I've just noticed this 26 clue. That could end up having a 4 and a 6 in it if that's green. Can that... If that's a 1... 25. You can't make 25 in 3 cells. If that's 1, you actually then know 4 of the 6 digits in this 26 cage. Because if that's a 1, this has to turn green, and therefore it is a 7 in the cage. Because you can't get to 26 with just 4 cells. So we'd actually then have 18 in those cells. These 2 would have to add up to 8. Yeah, which is impossible. If that's 2, this would be 6, which it can't be. There's already a 4 and a 6 pair in the site of this 26. And if it's 3, it's 5, and that doesn't work. So this is not correct. So this square here is not a 1. That must be a 1. That's a 1. That's a 7. Oh, it's done nothing. I don't believe it. Okay. So do we have to think about this being green or not? I suppose if that's green, then we've got a 1, 4, 6 triple in the virtual cage, which is 11. So these squares would add up to 15. If that's a 2, these are adding up to 30. Aha! That's interesting. So that doesn't work at all. If that's a 3, these are adding up to 12 without being 3, 9, or 5, 7, or 4, 8. Doesn't work. Right, I'm going to carry on looking at this. This doesn't work. Making this green doesn't work because it puts a 1, 4, 6 in sight of this 26. These 3 have to add to 15, and there's no way of doing it. If this is 2, these add up to 13 without using 4, 9, or 6, 7, or 5, 8, so it doesn't work. If this is 3, these add up to 12, and we can't use 5, 7, we can't use 4, 8, this is a 3, so you can't use 3, 9. So this just doesn't work at all. This square here is not green. And now we've only got 4 cells to fill the 26 cage in. So they're maxed out. 6, 3, and this is an 8, 9 pair. That's the only way it works. So that's great. So now we get a 6, a 3, a 2, an 8, 9 pair here, which gives us a 5 here, a 9 here, and an 8 here. Now I've seen one thing that might give. Let me just check whether I can see anything else. What I've noticed is 9, 9 and 9 here. I've got to put 9 in the 10 cage. So this 10 cage must be a 9, 1 pair, which forces this to be grey. And it gives me a 1 and a 2 in box 7. And I'm sure it does more. I just have to work out what. What else does it do? We can get rid of 6s down the right hand side of the grid. We can get rid of 4 from this square. Oh, I'm getting excited now. I'm fairly confident I'm going to be able to finish this. And I really, really want to be able to finish it because this needs to be seen. This square's a naked single. Look at row 5. It's got to be a 4, 8 or a 9, and it sees 8, 9 in its column. So that's 4, that's 5. This square here is an 8 or a 9. Let's look at these squares, therefore. We need those squares to be a 3, 6 pair, which unfortunately looks ambiguous, so I don't think we know how to do that. Okay. I'd like to resolve this somehow. Oh, I tell you what, I still haven't quite finished the caging, have I? I've got to look at this 21 as well. Don't immediately. Oh, this 4 is resolving some stuff up there. 4, 9, 4. That gives me an 8 here. 8, 9. So we can get rid of 8s from these 2 cells. Is this maybe column 5, because these squares here are, yeah, where does 9 go in column 5? It only goes here. So that means these 2 squares get reduced, and I still need a 7 and an 8, which I can now do. 8, 7, 3. So now I need 5 and 6 into, yes, good. Where does 5 go? Only there. 5 and 6 go into the grid. That fixes 6 and 4 at the top. This column now looks quite interesting. 2s and 7s, yes, 2 must go there, 7 goes here. 4, 7. Oh, so this square's 3 or 6, and this square's known to be 4. These 2 squares are known to be 3 and 5. We can do that. 5, 3. That gives me a 6. A 9, a 4, an 8, and a 6, and a 3, and a 3, and a 6. And we finish off, hopefully, with a 7. And I have noticed I've not filled in everything. So hopefully that's... Oh, no, I have not filled in those either. 9 and 8 up there. So what's going on down here? Is this in this cage or not? We've got it... Oh, no. Well, it's already seeing 21. So this square must be grey. And I think that is... Yes! That is how to solve one of the great puzzles. Yet again, I mean, the world of constructors at the moment are producing gem upon gem upon gem. And this is startlingly brilliant, Udukos. It really is. The idea at the start with these sort of iterative totals and the way that you get left with these dominoes in the edge. I can't remember exactly where they were, but these dominoes in the edge that you know have certain digits in them. But then this idea that there is a particular arrangement of the greys, which locks the greys into areas where they can't touch anything else, is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in a Sudoku, frankly. I absolutely loved it. And, you know, even after that, there's so much clever logic. I'm not sure if I needed the stuff with the corners, but that was really clever. And I just love the fact you could keep pecking away at it. Like you knew there had to be a grey above this 12, because otherwise the 12 just takes too many cells. And that grey then had some geometric implications. It's just wonderful. Let me know in the comments how you got on with the puzzle. I hope you enjoyed it even a scintilla as much as I did. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.